It is Beyond the Box Score. Two simple people here for you, Adam Azer and Dan Schneider. Jacob Gibbs is sick today and not able to join the show, and he is going to miss a lot because we are going to give you, of course, some awesome stats, and including some from Jacob via email. You're not going to read the email. I'm going to read it to you. And we are going to talk about the Cardinals now likely without Marquise Brown for the season. That is a crusher. Third most targets in football among wide receivers. He is the number 6 wide receiver in PPR, foot injury, and likely out for the season, along with starting guard Justin Pugh. What happens now to the Cardinals offense as they get DeAndre Hopkins back? I'm Adam Azer with Dan Schneider here. We're also going to talk about last night's game and some more big topics, including the Packers offense, sell high candidates, a general look at offense so far in the NFL, and our 5 favorite albums of all time. It will be toward the end of the show. I know you're looking forward to giving your spicy hot take on that.
I wouldn't call it a hot take, but I am looking forward to giving my take. As you know, I'm a very opinionated person. I promise to all the listeners, I will not begin this show with a 12-minute or however long it was timed out to be rant about my league collapsing under me as the commissioner and all the fallout from that. Though some people did DM me and support me, say they enjoyed it. They've been in similar situations. One thing you should never do, Adam, I don't know if you have ever done this. I did it for the first time. I read the YouTube comments. Oh my God, is that a toxic place? It is. I can't ever do it. I can't ever do it again because it's not. But one of the funnier things that someone said is that they think that I get absolutely giddy whenever Jamie recognizes me or mentions me by name. And I just thought that was really funny to point out. One thing I will say, though, before we get into Beyond the Box Score, I need to clear my name because, Adam, if there's ever slander, yes. What do you mean stop? Do you know, have you seen the replies? People are like, this is so Bush League from Dan. I can't believe you would do this. Adam said that I went back on a bet, but the reality is I said I would honor the bet we made, even though I changed my opinion on it. Adam, as a nice guy, said I'll just bet it on one of the, I'll just handle it in my own way. But I need to make it clear I did not go back on a bet.
We were going to make a bet, Chiefs Bills. I was going to take the Bills minus 2.5. Dan honored it. He said, okay, fine, but I changed my mind. What am I supposed to do? Like, okay, well, you have to stick to it. So then I had to go make the bet on the app, lose some of the money. You know, it was like minus 130 or something like that. So, but we won. So
I did say I would honor the bet. So I want to make that clear. But let's move forward with some week 6 recap.
Let's do it. All right. So first, let's start with the big news. We were going to talk about the Cardinals offense later, and we can get into it a little bit later here if you want. But we might as well. This was our first big topic, and then even before that was before I knew about the Marquise Brown situation. So, assuming he's out for the season, is that official, by the way, or is it he is likely
not official, likely out for the year?
And they traded for Robbie Anderson. They gave a 6th-round pick and a 7th-round pick to the Cardinals for Robbie Anderson. They get Hopkins. They lose Marquise Brown. I was so excited to see Kyler Murray with both wide receivers and Rondale Moore and Zach Ertz. I thought this could be really good for him, but what do you think now about the Cardinals going forward?
Well, I wouldn't immediately expect that Robbie Anderson will carve out the role that Marquise Brown had. It's not just that the targets were so heavy for Brown, and we knew that would change with Hopkins coming back, but they're different kinds of receivers, and they operate in a different area of the field. I know Brown has been at times labeled as just a deep threat specialist, but he's shown over the past 2 seasons, even with Lamar Jackson dating back to last year, that he can work the intermediate and short levels. That's not something I trust Robbie Anderson to do necessarily, Adam. But for me, the bigger issue remains, and that's Cliff Kingsbury in place as head coach. That will be the offensive system throughout the rest of the season. There are ways to improve this, and we'll get to this a little bit later because I think it was one of the big questions. But this is an offense that doesn't use pre-snap motion. This is an offense that hasn't ultimately changed that much throughout his tenure as the coach. And I think it's a broken offensive system. And we've seen this before with, for example, Carolina this week. A lot of people like, oh, new coach in town, DJ Moore, get him in your lineup, big bump with the new coach. And that wasn't really the case because the system can't really change in season. So
the quarterback changed, though. I mean, they went to PJ Walker, and as much as we don't like Baker Mayfield, I think he's better for DJ Moore than PJ Walker is. And,
sure.
I mean, as much as we don't like you don't like Cliff Kingsbury, and just get into this now. We won't save it for later.
Okay.
They are 13th in total yards. They are really bad in the red zone. They are 23rd in touchdown conversion rate in the red zone. They are 28th in third down conversions. And Kyler has the 6th most. I was like, well, are they always in third and long? He has the 6th most dropbacks on third down and 5 or longer. But he's the 19th most dropbacks on third down and 7 or longer. So it's weird. It's like he probably has a lot of third and 5 or 6. But that is a lot. I mean, to have the 6th most dropbacks on third down and 5 or longer. So obviously they're in third and 5 or longer a lot. But I hope Hopkins can fix some of these problems, especially in the red zone. I guess the good news is we have a sample of Kyler Murray without Marquise Brown and with DeAndre Hopkins, and it's elite. It's, it's one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, it's not the same team. They have no run game. And, sometimes people think that helps the quarterback. Oh, they can't run the ball. They're going to throw. Sometimes that hurt. But also, like, they can't move the ball, because they can't run. And, it's probably easier to rush the passer when you don't have to honor the run. And you're going to be in longer third down situations when you can't run. So there are definitely some big issues here that are not just going to be solved by DeAndre Hopkins coming back. Do you think they are better with Hopkins and without Brown, or with Brown and without Hopkins like we've seen for 6 games?
That's a great question, and I think they're going to be a better team with Hopkins for mainly the two of the things that one thing you brought up and the other thing that's been plaguing them. One, it's the red zone offense, and that's where he really can make his hay. He's one of the best contested catch receivers in the NFL. I think in the last decade, he's one of the best body control, receivers from a body control standpoint in the air at adjusting those passes, and that's going to help them. And the other issue, like you mentioned earlier, was that they do actually have a decent amount of yards. They're just not really doing anything in the explosive passing game. Kyler Murray has really bad efficiency as a deep thrower this year, and they're not attempting a lot of passes. And he even talked about it after the game. He said, look, we've been able to cross the 50. We haven't been able to score. And if defenses are just going to play really soft with 2 high safeties against us, we have to figure out a way, once we get down in there and into the opponent's territory, to actually turn it into points. And Hopkins can help them with that a lot more than Marquise Brown can. So I think the answer to that question is yes.
The yards are really way down for Kyler Murray. So he's on pace for 4,145 yards. And last year he was on pace for 4,600 yards. Now that was kind of high, but not really. I mean, he can be a 4,500 yard guy in 17 games. Right now he's on pace for 4,145. The touchdowns are the bigger issue. He's on pace for 17 touchdown passes. I still have faith in Kyler Murray. He's 8th per game in 4-point. He's 10th per game in 6-point. I think he's probably more like QB7. I'd take him over Dak Prescott rest of season. I don't know about Burrow. I think I'd probably take Burrow in 6 and Kyler in 4-point. But I think he's still a must start and not someone, Dan, that if I have Kyler Murray, I'm not really looking to upgrade a quarterback. I'm fine with him.
I think that's fair. And I think I'm with you on that, despite, some red flags that are obvious there, which we didn't even mention, which is Justin Pugh, who was arguably one of their best offensive linemen on an offensive line that's already bottom tier in the NFL, now out for the season with an injury. So there are this issues outside of Kingsbury, but I think you're right. He still has too much upside with his ability to run and his ability just to create plays with Hopkins coming back into the mix. I wouldn't have the same kind of faith if Hopkins wasn't coming back into the mix. I think that's the key factor here that can give us some faith.
Yeah, it's just a shame that Marquise Brown is out, but that is a lot of targets. Like I said, 3rd most targets in football. So now this really makes me wonder. I mean, does Rondale Moore continue to have a big role? Everybody is saying sell high on Zach Ertz, sell high on Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, I think, has 4 games with double-digit targets. Remember, they've thrown the 2nd most passes in the NFL, one behind the Colts, or at least Matt Ryan has 1 more pass attempt than Kyler Murray. I don't know if there's some other pass attempts around there, but Matt Ryan leads the NFL in pass attempts. How weird is that? Dan's going to talk about that a little bit later. Kyler Murray's 2nd. They're running a ton of plays. So that's good from a PPR perspective. A lot of targets, a lot of catches, maybe not a ton of yards. But I don't know. I think I'm going to back off the Zach Ertz sell high, Dan. I think he's a tight end. He's going to be a top 10 tight end now without Marquise Brown. He may not be a top 5 tight end, but he's a tight end, and you're going to start him. I don't think you're going to be hunting the waiver wire personally if you have Ertz. So I don't know you're going to get this top 5, but I do think must start basically.
I think that's a fair take too. I mean, we look at the tight end landscape. Last week we were even debating if Taysom Hill was a must start, and then Taysom Hill goes out and plays 21% of the snaps, right? And it's just you can see where the barometer is set for must start tight end is not very high right now.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So Rondale Moore, somebody we'll discuss tomorrow on the waiver wire show. He's available in some leagues, but that slot role has been really valuable. And you were just expecting everything to change when Hopkins came back, but maybe it just won't change that much. Maybe
he plays the Marquise Brown role, right?
Yeah, I mean, not 1-to-1, right? He's going to go downfield probably a little bit more. They're obviously different players, and I don't really care that much about Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, for fantasy standpoint,
right? For messing these things up for these guys. I think he's depth and a deep threat.
He's depth, and he'll play the role of, hopefully, which they're hoping to do, opening up that middle of the field by just running those vertical routes to clear out safeties, which, hasn't worked in their favor yet, but they're hoping that eventually defenses will give them those opportunities.
Okay, well, welcome to the show. That's topic number one. We're going to talk about the Cowboys-Eagles game last night, and Dan is going to tell you about all the wonderful content we have for you on cbssports.com/fantasy. As fantasy basketball season is starting. Oh my gosh, the NBA starts tomorrow, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
That's wild. Wow.
You're a big Knicks fan, Adam, aren't you?
I'm a huge Knicks fan. Yeah.
I wish I was a bigger Knicks fan. That's the one, like, you make fun of my Mets fanhood. The one that really I deserve to be made fun of is my Knicks fanhood.
I don't really think you have Knicks fanhood. I think you're not a fan. I mean, I'm not going to make fun of you. You don't have it.
I have a little bit of Knicks fanhood, Adam. I have a little bit of Knicks fan. They're the team I root for. I hope they win.
All right. Well, look, if they're good, you can hop on to the
That's what I will do. Yeah.
Happy to have you. So yeah, what kind of content do we have for the people?
So over at CBS Sports Fantasy, you can get a lot of different content these days. You can find what Adam just mentioned, some fantasy basketball content, which we've been building out recently over the last 2 seasons. Today, there's some really good articles. Start sit for week 1, which I thought was excellent. And then just if you're looking for like a blocks, if you're in categories leagues, you can there's a blocks boost article, players you can target to help you with blocks. And then every week on our site, from the fantasy football standpoint, we just have excellent content that I hope you guys are consuming and enjoying. I'll highlight a few of my favorite pieces. One of my favorites from each day. My favorite from Monday is always Chris Towers' newsletter/article, which breaks down every game, looks at things like winners and losers from those games by targeting things like snaps, targets, things that you need to know. Tuesday-wise, I love seeing Heath's previews for each position. You'll get stats to know, you'll get projections, and you'll get DFS plays there as well as waiver articles. And of course, Jamie's waiver wire article is as in-depth as you can find it. Wednesday is my favorite day because I get Dave Richards' sleeper starts, sits, bust. That to me is the most comprehensive article we have every week. I use it to set my DFS lineups. I would suggest you do the same. Then Thursday, Friday, round up with a great injury report from Tara Roberts that also has a DFS spin. And on Thursday, you can get PPR cheat sheets and non-PPR cheat sheets, things of that nature to kind of just help you finalize those lineups. And
of course, starter sit, waiver wire, trade charts, all there, cbssports.com/fantasy. All right. Philadelphia 26, Dallas 17. Noah Brown almost had a touchdown. He had a really nice catch. It was overturned. CeeDee Lamb played more snaps from the slot than he did out wide for the second time this season, probably to avoid Slay and Bradbury, try to get him some matchups. And it wasn't a great game for CeeDee Lamb, but you know what? Everything is about to change. He had 5 catches for 68 yards on 10 targets. Dak Prescott could very well start this week against the Detroit Lions, or this upcoming week, week 7. Any major takeaways from Philadelphia 26, Dallas 17?
Well, I will say this about Lamb. I was actually enthused with his production, or with his game despite the production, because I do like to see him lined up in the slot. I feel like that's the best place for him to win early and get him really the freest two-way routes and basically make him more of a consistent PPR play. And he should have had a long catch, potentially a long touchdown in this game on the interception late in the game where he was wide open and Cooper rushed. That ball gets there with Dak Prescott. That potentially is a touchdown for Dak Prescott, and that changes his whole box score. So I remain pretty heavy in on CeeDee Lamb, and I think there's still a buy. I don't want to call medium. Maybe I don't want to call it buy high. Maybe buy medium on CeeDee Lamb with Dak Prescott coming back. So hopefully assume this week. And then on the flip side with the Eagles, I think, look, you're not going to bench him, but you are going to get these kinds of weeks with Dallas Goedert where he just is not really much of a factor here. And the passing game isn't really working that well, or they just really don't need to rely on the passing game. It's not in the game script. This game, they're dominating up front in the trenches. When the run game, there's no real reason to get pass heavy with what the Cowboys were doing defensively. So I still think with Goedert, you got to play him every week, but you're going to have to take these kinds of weeks with the good ones as well.
Well, look, I think when you look at the passing game for the Eagles, it all looks really good right now. A.J. Brown scored. Devontae Smith scored. A.J. Brown has 7 to 8 targets in 4 of his last 5 games. In those games, he has scored 11.9, 14.5, 6.2, and 17.7 PPR fantasy points. For the season, A.J. Brown is the number 15 wide receiver per game. Devontae Smith is outside the top 24, But remember, he had no catches in week 1. He's been much better since then. They're really not throwing that much. They're dividing it up between those 3 guys, Smith, Goddard, and Brown. And it is really good, but I think it's kind of sneakily holding their league-winning upside back a little bit. Like, I'm not really complaining at all about what you're getting from Brown, Smith, and Goddard. I think they're all great players, probably must starts. I mean, they're, Goddard and AJ Brown certainly are. Devontae Smith probably, but like Devontae Smith has 4, 7, 12, 4, 11, and 5 targets. That's 3 games with 4 or 5 targets, 1 game with 7. So I just think there's going to be some inconsistencies there. And, maybe you can turn him into a player who has a more consistent target volume. And obviously Jalen Hurts doesn't throw a ton of touchdowns because he rushes for some touchdowns. What do you think about the Cowboys running backs? We've been asked, we're going to get one of our topics later is sell high candidates. And one of the things we're going to talk about then is running backs in shared backfields who are coming off of good games. And are those feel like James Robinson, Jeff Wilson, guys that you look back and go, damn, I probably should have sold high on them. What do you think, though, about Zeke? Because you could easily see a case where their offense takes off now with Dak back and Zeke's a pretty good fantasy option.
Yeah, Zeke is not a player I'd be looking to sell right now because I think with Zeke, there's a difference between selling high on a player like maybe a Jeff Wilson or a Robinson. With Zeke, there is just this kind of assumed, I don't know if I want to call it assumed, Adam, but there is this feeling in the fantasy community that when you try to trade Ezekiel Elliott, you don't really feel like you're getting much of a return. There's no enthusiasm with the other side looking to trade for him. He's been around the league for a while. He's struggled in a lot of the efficiency metrics, including this season. He hasn't topped 100 yards in a really long time. And he ultimately, from the eye test, doesn't to me look like the same player he was earlier in his career. But he still can be a fantasy asset if this offense reaches the levels it reached with Dak Prescott before his injury, because that was an offense that was moving the ball up and down the field in scoring position a lot and utilizing him specifically more in the passing game. That's one thing where he'll get a boost. Dak Prescott will utilize him more in the passing game. So he's a hold for me. I wouldn't sell low on him right now.
That's fair. Well, I think it's so high because he just came off of 81 yards and a touchdown.
High for him, right? Yeah.
He's got Detroit this week. He's got Chicago next. He's got Detroit in week 7, Chicago in week 8. Those could be positive game scripts for Zeke. I definitely see a good case for Zeke. I also feel like I was on HQ earlier today, and he was one of the winners for Jamie. And I just thought, like, how many weeks is Zeke a winner and then a loser? Oh, he's a winner because he scored and this and that. Oh, he's a loser because Tony Pollard did this and they're not throwing to him. And it's just, I'm just wondering if it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster with Zeke, and now is the right time to get rid of him. But I'm not convinced of that. I'll throw that. I'll let you all out there ponder that. The fact that they have Detroit and Chicago the next 2 weeks, gets me off of that thought a little bit.
Got to wait at least for that Lions game, I feel like, to really build that case. Now you can go to your trade partners like, look, he has 2 back-to-back weeks. Dak Prescott's back. You start to sell those narratives.
Right. Well, that's coming up. So, all right, some news and notes here. Carson Wentz fractured finger. Kenny Pickett's probably going to be out next week. If a player suffers a concussion, you should now, with the new protocols, expect them to miss the next week, as we saw with Chris Olave. Hopefully getting Tua back this week. As the Rams go into their bye, looks like this is the end of the Cam Akers ride with the Rams. Najee Harris played with a steel plate in his shoe for the first 5 games. He ditched it, and he says he's 100% now, Dan. What do you think about now? It's not like he had a great game. He did catch a touchdown wide open, but no more steel plate in the shoe for Najee Harris.
I mean, to me, this doesn't really change much for me on Najee Harris. It's not really a talent issue for me with Harris. It's a combination of all things, the offense, the usage. Yeah, he caught that wide open touchdown, like you said, but look at how disappointing his game was anyway, in a game where the game script was actually supposed to work in his favor because the Steelers had a lead for the entire game. And so ultimately, he's still not a player I'd be trying to trade for right now.
All right, let's see if I have a few more news items for you here. Jalen Waddle has a shoulder injury that might linger. This one's important. We'll keep an eye on that. Waddle and Najee Harris facing each other. Steelers Dolphins this week. Cameron Brate has a neck injury. It wasn't a concussion. Deion Jackson's got that quad injury. They're at Tennessee, and we don't know about. I expect one of Hines or Taylor to come back this week, but it could be Philip Lindsay. Dalton Schultz tweaked his knee pregame and was not able to play. Philadelphia right tackle Lane Johnson left with a concussion. That was a pretty big deal for them, but they're going into their bye, so hopefully he can get back. The Saints have a Thursday game at Arizona. They are not expected to have Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, or Marshawn Lattimore. Chris Olave has a better chance to play. PJ Walker left the concussion. Could be Jacob Eason this week. Aaron Rodgers said that Green Bay needs to simplify things. They will be without Randall Cobb for the foreseeable future. He may have had a high ankle sprain. And that's big. Some offensive line stuff. San Francisco lost offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey. Ravens right tackle Morgan Moses left with an injury. Rams left tackle Joe Noteboom is out for the year with an Achilles injury. That's a big loss for them. All right, I can pretty much stop there.
I would say one thing on the Packers note, because, that offense looks as broken as it's been since really LaFleur got here. Even in those first games, I know they took some time to get into that system and then really caught stride with it. Aaron Rodgers back-to-back MVPs now, so it's not like I think this offense is dead. But one thing that's interesting to me, Randall Cobb was the player that he trusted the most in this offense. He played a lot of the reason he played so much is because of that rapport that they had built over the years. But in his absence, Robert Tonyan actually had a season high 74% route participation, and before that it was 62%. And he led the targets with the Packers with a 27% target share. So I feel like Tonyan right now, Big Bob, is somebody who I would be looking to get on my team if I need tight end help.
That's a great point, and he is fifth actually, tied for fifth in catches among tight ends. He has one more catch than Dallas Goedert, Robert Tonyan. Okay, yeah, he'll be talked about on the show tomorrow. Let's take a break. When we come back, we will give you some of the stats that you need to know, and then we'll go through our 5 big topics, including the Packers offense, sell-high candidates, offense in general in the NFL, and our 5 favorite albums of all time. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. All right, Dan, let's get statty. What do you got for me?
All right, let's start with the one that stood out the most to me, and it's the Indianapolis Colts. Why did it stand out the most to me, Adam? Because when you have a failing and flailing offense like the Colts have been for most of this season, really going into 2 Thursdays ago, or their game 2 weeks ago, I think they scored the fewest points in the NFL. You need to look for things like ultimately like massive changes within the scheme or within the play calling that could potentially change the fantasy landscape. And I think we've seen that now for the Colts. They had a season high 88% of their situation neutral plays that they decided to pass on this week versus 60% prior to week 6. So what does that mean? Situation neutral plays means based on the analytics, these plays could be called pass or run, just based on the efficiency of the play, the projected efficiency of the play. And on those situations, they decided to pass 88% of the time versus 60% of the time. Also,
does it not?
Go ahead.
Does it not, get rid of being down 10 points in the fourth quarter also, where you
that factors into a situation neutral rate. So if you're right. So yeah, if you're up by a lot, you're expected to run more, and if you're down by a lot, you're expected to pass more. Right. So these are situation neutral plays. When it's just a neutral situation, you could either pass or run. They decided to pass 28% of the time more than their previous week high. Also, going into the game, their no huddle rate was just 5.3%. Set 22nd most in the NFL. They ran no huddle 47% of the time, the third highest rate in any game. So really, they changed a lot of what they did in this game. They did up-tempo, no huddle, and they threw a lot. And it led to a season high 75% or 75 total offensive snaps. And also, it led to their most points by a 2-touchdown difference of any game they've had all year. So if you're the Colts and you watch the film back on this game, you look at the key changes you've made, use an insane amount more no huddle, you start to pass more in neutral situations. Do you go back and try to do what wasn't working, even though it may have worked last year? Or do you kind of transition to an offense that may be more pass heavy, may have a lot more plays, may have a lot more situations where they're throwing the ball downfield and opportunities for that? And all of that leads to good things for fantasy. Even for a player like Jonathan Taylor, who we expect back this week, I think it's better, honestly, if they're throwing more and moving the ball more and scoring more. Even if he gets fewer touches, the touches will count for more, and they'll be in better spots for scoring fantasy points. So to me, this rang alarm bells. Like, I think the Colts will stick with this. I think this will be a part of their game plan moving forward, specifically the no huddle and the tempo. And I think that's a really good thing for Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman, and ultimately Jonathan Taylor as well.
Especially if he catches passes. Now, if Taylor and Hines both play,
right, then
I don't know what that would mean for Taylor if they stick with this offense.
Well, it would mean that when they're in these situations where they're going no huddle, one back is staying on the field.
It's got to be Taylor. Yeah. I mean, you can't have. I don't care what's successful. You can't have a game plan that doesn't involve Jonathan Taylor. Right. But he was running a lot of routes. before his injury. I mean, I can look it up. It'd be the first 4 weeks?
First 4 weeks. Yeah, he's missed the last 2.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and look into that in a moment. There were other teams that changed their offense, right?
Well, the Colts were the ones that had a radical change. The only thing, there were other offensive notes I wanted to point out here that stood out to me, Adam, and I could start with the Bucs here. The Bucs are a team, we've talked about them a bunch on this show. We thought that maybe they were going back to, just allowing Tom Brady to really run the offense and have it be similar to the Bruce Arians style. But I just feel like there's been a really philosophical change in this team with Todd Bowles as head coach, because they still have Byron Leftwich, working with Brady to run the offense. But just listen to these numbers, Adam, because yesterday, they ran the ball a lot in situations I didn't think they should run the ball. So the Bucs they have the 6th best EPA, and EPA is like expected points added per play. It's just another advanced metric per dropback this year. But the 32nd EPA per rush attempt this year. It's a massive difference right there, and just shows how inefficient their run game has been. But they're also 20th in neutral situation first down pass rate. So they're not bottom of the league there, but they're bottom 3rd. And these are just not numbers you want to see from a Bucs offense, because there were some positives to take away, like specifically player-wise. Chris Godwin, 91% route participation, and he had a 31% target share. Those are the numbers you can look forward and be like, okay, they're finally getting him going. But I just feel like this passing game isn't an issue right now from an efficiency standpoint. It's an issue from a volume standpoint. And they really need to figure out a way to get back.
I don't know. I mean, they've thrown like 50, 50, and 40 passes the last 3 weeks.
But they really should be throwing more like they were throwing in the past seasons, though. I mean, just if you look at
you throw.
Well, when you're 32nd in rush EPA per play, you really shouldn't be rushing the ball very often. I think you should have more of like kind of that, old school 2021 Josh Allen style Bills offense, which is like almost throw every play and use the passing game as an extension of the run game.
I guess they've thrown 144 passes in the last.
For sure, the raw numbers are there for sure, and that's good for fantasy. But they're not a team that can run the football right now with the way they're blocking, with the injuries on the offensive line, and with whatever's left of Leonard Fournette this season. So I just feel like the one specific number there, the 20th, that stood out to me, the 20th in neutral first down pass rate. Specifically, they have to pass the ball more in my mind on first down situations. And ultimately, I would become even more pass heavy team when I'm rushing the ball.
Can you look that up in the last 3 games?
I would have to go back. I can't do it at this moment. I'd have to go back through True Media, but I can come back to you with that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, because they certainly seem to have changed their philosophy. Even the last 4 games. I mean, it's 4 straight games with 42 or more pass attempts. Now, 3 of those games, did they beat the Chiefs? No, they lost to the Chiefs. 3 of those games are losses. So keep that in mind. They're 3-3, and they lost to Green Bay, they lost to Kansas City, and they lost at Pittsburgh somehow. Another team that changed their offense was the Bengals. The Bengals are hoping they got things figured out. And I'm not necessarily convinced, because the Saints defense is just not really what it once was, and they didn't have Lattimore in this game. But they ran 2 plays from under center all game. They were in the shotgun the entire game. The only 2 plays were a quarterback sneak and a kneel down. But they weren't really throwing the ball much further downfield. They were getting, I think, a lot of yards after catch. One thing Joe Burrow said was like they were just taking what the defense was giving them, throwing a lot to Tyler Boyd. I think they were throwing to him on 3rd down. And then he said that eventually they were able to get the Saints to be a little bit more aggressive defensively, because they were picking them apart underneath. So you're hoping this is the start of something for their offense. But I just thought really interesting. They were in the shotgun the entire game, except for a QB sneak and a kneel down.
And you got to love, if you look at kind of the route chart of that game, one other thing to add to that, Adam, you have to love that the Bengals did make a concerted effort to diversify and expand the route tree for Jamar Chase, and it made a clear difference. They used him in different ways than they have, which is something we talked about, I think, on last week's show here, or one of the mailbags. And that's a great sign moving forward, because Jamar Chase has been one of the bigger disappointments. And I think moving forward now, you can kind of look at him as somebody who you can count on a weekly basis, which wasn't exactly the case for most of the first 5 weeks.
Here are some stats that I wanted to throw out there. New England rookie wide receiver Tyquan Thornton.
Yes.
He has 6 catches this season. 3 of them have been on wide receiver screens. So somebody asked, is he viable? I mean, I think he's going to have to be a little bit more diverse. And Bailey Zappi's very conservative, doesn't really throw the ball downfield. But boy, his touchdown was like a 1-yard touchdown. He left his man in the dust.
Yeah.
his speed was on display, but so far it's been a little gimmicky with Tyquan Thornton, 3 wide receiver screens on 6 catches.
I'll take this time to push hard for Tyquan Thornton if I can, Adam, because he was a player who I wrote about in the pre-draft period when me and Dave do our scouting of these players. I thought he was the best value of any player before the draft at the wide receiver position. He ended up going in round 2, which no one expected. He's supposed to be a round 3 or 4 pick. So Patriots obviously saw something too. His route participation this week was 73%, which is really excellent stuff. His target share was 17% and a target rate, targets per route run of 19%. That's really good stuff too. I just really like the narrative, Adam, of the rookie receiver working with the rookie quarterback. This is assuming if Bailey Zappi gets another start. I really like the narrative of that because they're working together all throughout camp. They're working together in the offseason before that throughout OTAs. They're building that rapport. They know where they're going to be. The timing is right, and they have trust there. Bailey Zappi obviously has a clear trust in Tyquan Thornton. I believe in the talent as well. So I actually think he's a viable potential option for as long as Zappi is the quarterback.
Yeah, and you know what? They didn't exactly come out and say Mac Jones is our guy when he's healthy. So
yeah, but it is Belichick. I wouldn't expect him to say like anything. I wouldn't read. Yeah.
Here are your top 7 running backs in routes run this year. Devin Singletary is number 1. He has run the most routes. Leonard Fournette is number 2. Christian McCaffrey is number 3. Darrell Henderson is 4th. Joe Mixon 5. Saquon Barkley 6. Aaron Jones 7. However, in this group, it is McCaffrey and Fournette and Mixon who are getting a ton of targets per route run, whereas Singletary, Barkley, and Aaron Jones are in the 16 to 18% range of targets per route run. You know, Fournette, McCaffrey, and Mixon are all 21% or more. Darrell Henderson, though, is being targeted on only 11.8% of his routes. But I do like the fact that he's running a ton of routes. He has been all year. They just have to throw the ball to him. Speaking of which, Kareem Hunt played 12 snaps and ran 9 routes on third down alone. Did not have a single target in the game. You like that role, but Brissett just does not throw to his running backs, really.
And where are we supposed to get? What's that Jamie bet that you have? Was that you and Jamie with the
catches? Yep.
Oh my God, he must be getting crushed on that bet.
He is now. Yeah. That was a big setback for Kareem. Raheem Mostert and Chase Edmonds both played 7 snaps on third down. Both ran 5 or 6 routes. Their snap counts weren't that different, but it's just weird. When Chase Edmonds is on the field, he just does not get the ball ever. And I'm going to tell you who the most droppable player in fantasy is. Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
Garrett Wilson is 82% rostered. He played a season-low 44% of the snaps. He played 56% of the snaps in Week 5, and his next 3 games are against the Broncos, Patriots, and Bills, and then a bye, and then the Patriots again. Garrett Wilson has 76 yards on 15 targets in his last 3 games combined. He is 82% rostered. That is an injustice. He should be dropped.
I don't hate the take, Adam. I will say this. I think part of that route, part of the snap share there has to do with the fact that the Jets were ahead by so much in both of these past 2 weeks, which won't be the case every week for this Jets team. That's a game script thing. But even so, even if snap share goes up, I don't feel that confident in him right now. I don't feel that confident in the Jets passing game at all.
He's playing less than the other guy. He's playing less than Davis.
He is playing less than Davis and Moore too already, despite the fact that Moore is not getting any targets, which is a whole nother issue. I just think that Jets passing game is not going to reach a certain level it needs to for him to find consistency with Zach Wilson at quarterback.
Who wins the Super Bowl, Giants or Jets?
Well, they're combined 9-3 right now, which is amazing. Just unbelievable. These New York teams have been the worst combined record since 2017 in the NFL, and now they're 9-3. But Super Bowl, if the Giants played the Jets, give me the Giants.
Okay, if I agree. Right? My last stat, Kyle Pitts ran 14 routes last week.
Pitts.
That ranked 30. Yes, it was. That ranked 32nd among tight ends in Week 6. They just don't throw the ball. They're too good. They're much better than we thought.
They're too good.
They are. And I caught the touchdown, but 19 yards. So I don't know that there was much to be pleased with Kyle Pitts. Even though
there's not. And the problem is it's now carrying over to Drake London, a player who we love. We talked about a lot earlier. Talent's there, but when you're throwing the ball this many times a game, it's hard to have production out of anyone there in that passing game.
Do you have any more stats you wanted to throw out?
Couple more. One thing that I just thought you'd find interesting, Adam, and maybe the listeners would as well, because I just think it's so unexpected. Okay. I'm going to tell you a team, Adam, that's top 10 in the following categories that you would have never expected, and let's see if you can guess them. 1, total points, total scoring. 2, points per play. 3, total yards, top 10. And 4, yards per play. Who is that offense?
Falcons.
That could be the case. There may be multiple offenses who qualify for that. That's not the one I'm thinking. It's the New England Patriots.
Oh, yeah.
With Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, who we made fun of all offseason.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
They're top 10 in points per play, yards per play.
And that Bailey Zappi has played 2.5 games, and Brian Hoyer started. I mean, it's amazing. And I think they are among the leaders. Here are the teams that have the most completions of 25 or more yards. I assume the Broncos will pass the Patriots tonight. They're one behind. But number one, tied for one, is Buffalo and Kansas City. Number two is the Patriots. It's pretty crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is.
And one more I want to throw out there that we missed a little bit earlier, but I think is worth talking about. There are a couple interesting statistical trends for the Giants this week in their victory over the Ravens. I want to start with rookie Wan'Dale Robinson, who, again, I've been probably calling out for the last 3 weeks to stash on your benches. I hope you had him because things are going to get a lot better fast for him, and they weren't so bad in his what I call his debut this week. I mean, he did play in week 1. He played 10 snaps. For all 100% of the snaps, the first team offense got injured. Now he's back. He was on the field, Adam, for 35% of passing plays, which is not a lot. They're obviously like working back in slowly, but he had a 36% target rate on those plays, which is insane number.
Too small of a sample size.
Okay, sure, maybe you say that.
4 targets?
Yeah, but as I've been saying, he is going to operate in that Richie James role, and it's going to be that Richie James role on steroids because one thing he did that Richie James didn't do was command a 9.3 ADOT, average depth of target. So he can be used more, and that includes his touchdown, which had like an ADOT of 1 or 0.1 because it was just a short pass. That brings it down. So I really think you could be getting
too few targets.
Too few targets, fine.
I can't go through these stats with these few targets.
Okay,
you know?
okay. How about Daniel Bellinger?
With Tony last year, I mean, Tony had this amazing target per route run rate. Just wasn't enough targets.
That's fair, and that could be the same problem as we're running into with the Falcons, where they just simply don't have, enough pass attempts to go around.
I did that could be the case for the Giants, but I just meant specifically for Wan'Dale Robinson. He just didn't play enough and have enough targets for me to care about his rate stats on those targets personally.
That's fair. What about somebody like Daniel Bellinger, who played the highest percentage of snaps he has in the season, really just played now at full, it was 96%, I believe, or 98%, full tight end 1 role.
Yeah, that's great. I think deeper leagues, look, man, like they just don't throw it.
They don't throw enough.
More than 200 yards once. They're not a bad passing offense per se, because, like they're not embarrassing themselves, but they just don't throw that much, and they don't throw the ball downfield ever. So I have a hard time getting too excited about any Giant. Now, if Tony comes back, I think that maybe could change with Robinson. Then maybe you got finally some speed out there. But yeah, I don't know.
I'm going to stand by Robinson as a fantasy asset, not Bellinger. Bellinger's a deep league tight end, so dead. But Robinson, I think, can be the key cog in that offense.
Before we get into our big topics, I got to just say a personal thing right here. If anybody likes me, I need you to help me tonight. I need you.
Ooh.
I have maybe 4 or 5 leagues on the line tonight, and they are all about Courtland Sutton because he is my most rostered player. And all of my Sutton teams right now, it look like they're in winnable or losable games. So I need it, baby. If you don't have to root against Courtland Sutton tonight, do it with me. Everybody, Courtland Sutton, big game. Like if he gets 23 points, that would be amazing. If he gets 15 points, that would probably still be good enough to at least win most of them. So let's get Courtland Sutton with a good, if a great game would be amazing. Please, I need everybody with your good vibes. Throw them out there for Courtland Sutton.
Quite the assumption of you, Adam, to think that anybody likes you on the show.
Just
kidding. Everybody loves you on this show. Just kidding. But I will say this: if you do love Adam on the show, or just instead of rooting for Courtland Sutton, why don't you do something that's going to help us even more? Hit that like button. You might be watching right now. We have over 500 people watching, according to our advanced analytics on the back end. Only 60 likes. Come on, guys. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. Bring that up to 100. If we don't ever go triple digits, we might just Sopranos you and just cut to black at some point. So
not a good like per route run rate there.
Oh wait, I just spoiled it for Adam, he's probably.
I saw the last scene of The Sopranos.
Ew, you watched the last scene, but not any of the rest of the show.
Basically, all right. Listen, we gotta go here. I gotta, I gotta go to the vet today. I got a busy
big vet day for Adam. Big vet day.
To the vet. So I need to hurry up here on these big topics here. We already talked about the Cardinals. Let's go to the Packers. OJ Weber says, are the Packers running backs worth starting anymore?
I think we have the chance for a potential squeaky wheel gets grease situation this week with Aaron Jones. Aaron Rodgers specifically said he thinks Jones needs to get 20 touches per game. And then he said that's the right balance for the offense. Jones doesn't have a single 20-touch game this season, despite being obviously quite clearly their best skill player on offense. So I think that Jones is going to have a squeaky wheel gets grease week. It's a narrative. It's hard to go down narrative street and feel too confident at him. But I think they realize that they need to figure out a way to get him more involved. He's their best playmaker at the skill position, but on their skill positions by far right now. So I would still trust Aaron Jones. I do not trust AJ Dillon.
Just a couple news items coming in here. Rashad Bateman, close to returning. Gus Edwards could play Sunday against the Browns, or maybe that following Thursday at Tampa Bay. Yeah, Aaron Jones, here are his targets per route run last 4 seasons, because he's running a ton of routes. Like I said, he's got the 7th most routes run by running backs. Targets per route run last 4 seasons, 22.1%, 24.9%, 20.8%. This year, it's 16.9%. We just got up to 20%. That could really make a difference. Target share is not that much lower, but it's still the lowest it's been in the last 4 seasons. ADOT is way down. His ADOT is negative this year. Wow. And it's usually not high, but it's negative. It's not, it's never more than like 3. But yeah, so got to get him going in the passing game. My concern is, you just look at like his role since his injury last year, right? Aaron Jones gets hurt kind of midway, a little bit later than midway through the season, comes back. This is kind of what it was. He was splitting with AJ Dillon fairly evenly, and I think they were scoring a lot of touchdowns then, and they're not scoring any touchdowns now, really. AJ Dillon has 1 touchdown this season. It came in week 1. What does Aaron Jones have? 2? Did he score both of them against the Bears in week 2?
In week 2, yep.
He's got 1 game with more than 15 PPR fantasy points. He has 4 games with like fewer than 11, I think, PPR fantasy points, Aaron Jones. So I don't know about that 20-touch thing. I love the fact that he said that Aaron Rodgers said that, but it's been since the end of last season, except for that playoff game. Remember the playoff game?
Right.
A ton of catches. He had that long touchdown catch. So basically, AJ Dillon is a sit. There's no question. I think I am still going to start Aaron Jones.
Me too.
Don't feel like I have better options. So I feel like he's a number 2 running back, and it's been so good. Heath said it right, like on HQ today. He's been so good for the last 3 years. Let's not let 6 games define him. Get him more involved. He can be a league winner. Okay, Ruben says, sell high on which players before the floor drops?
Yeah, it's a good one. We missed the opportunity on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously, so you got to rule him out now. Jeff Wilson, we might have missed the opportunity there to sell high as well there.
But what do they have in common? And so This is what I like to say about this topic. I don't love it because I don't want to give away productive players. There just are not enough of them. So you have to go to someone that you're just not buying. I found this one to be a difficult one to answer.
Same.
I was going to say Zach Ertz, but that's off the table now. So I thought about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I thought about James Robinson. I thought about Jeff Wilson. And what do they all have in common? They are sharing. Well, Wilson wasn't really sharing, but Wilson was not involved in the passing game. Robinson is barely involved in the passing game. Wilson and Robinson, quite game script dependent. The Jaguars got off to a pretty good start. Wilson and Robinson also kind of big play dependent.
Yes.
To a degree, certainly with Robinson. Clyde, the role is all over the place. It's not to say that Clyde's never going to have a good game, by the way, rest of season. We just noticed that this is probably going to be the peak of his value. So I was thinking, who is in a situation where they're coming off a game, the game script was perfect for them.
Yeah.
Devin Singletary comes to mind. He was facing the Chiefs, who give up the most receiving production, and he had 4 catches. He is definitely the guy in the backfield. There's no question. He's not sell high because he's going to sink me, but Devin Singletary has 1 touchdown this year, and he's going to struggle with that, I think. Ramondre Stevenson is going to be a star for now, but not only is Damian Harris going to come back, but Ty Montgomery is going to come back.
Right.
At some point.
I like him as a potential sell high based on the role change.
Yeah, I think you got to get a lot because he really could win you. I don't know if Damian Harris coming back. Maybe Damian Harris comes back this upcoming week. I don't know. But as long as Harris is out, Ramondre Stevenson could win you the week every week. Like he could be Alexander Madison, basically. And then obviously better than that when Harris comes back. Zeke, another guy. I know we got Detroit and Chicago coming up. I know that. That's great. But again, Pollard's there. Zeke had what? He had 13 carries last night. Pollard had 11.
I like the Zeke sell high. I just think I would wait for Detroit. That was my only take. That was the only thing.
Wait for after Detroit.
After Detroit, right?
I don't dislike any of these guys, by the way.
Yeah.
Alvin Kamara is an interesting one. I think you got to be pretty damn deep at running back to consider it. But if you could get Jamar Chase for Alvin Kamara or Aaron Jones and Michael Pittman for Alvin Kamara, maybe you'd think about that. Here's why. Kamara has not scored this year. I don't think he's the goal line back. He's part of it, but Taysom Hill's definitely part of that mix. Mark Ingram could be part of that mix. And 6 catches in 2 straight games for Kamara. No Michael Thomas. Chris Olave out. No Jarvis Landry. Andy Dalton was the quarterback. That could change. So the passing role could change for Kamara. I still think we're talking about no worse than a second-round value. But he also has this lingering rib issue that's taken him out of 2 games. So he's a guy that I think is playing like a top 5 overall player the last 2 weeks. If you can turn that into, something awesome. Again, I'm not saying Kamara stinks. I think the last 2 weeks were great situations for him, and it could get worse going forward for Kamara. And then Gabe Davis is interesting. Still not a lot of targets. The last 2 weeks have been great matchups for him. I did look at 3 of his next 4 opponents, and 3 of them are giving up a lot of big plays through the air yard big plays. And that's what could really help Gabe Davis. So I'm hesitant. He might just be breaking out.
Right.
Again, all of these guys I like. It's not like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire situation where I think he's still kind of like a mid-round pick. I like them all. If you can turn them into something great, my guys would be Devin Singletary. He's more like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't think he's going to be a star. Singletary, Ramondre Stevenson, Zeke, Kamara, and Gabe Davis.
I think I can get behind all those besides Gabe Davis, despite the fact that, look, what I'm about to say does align with trading a player like Gabe Davis. I just think it's different when you have those big play threats like Davis on top offense. It's similar to like how Deshaun Jackson was years ago in fantasy, an asset that you can have. You may not get every week production, but when you do, it's spike weeks that can help you win long term. But I think the general rule for me when trying to find sell highs, Adam, is find the guys who are scoring a lot of touchdowns at a rate that is not sustainable. Touchdowns are the number one thing that can regress, and you got to look for volume that can change based on injuries and based on different situations that evolve due to the injuries. So a player like Clyde Edwards-Helaire was such a sell high, and we made that clear because his role wasn't very good from a participation standpoint those first few weeks, but he was just scoring every week. So you want to look for those guys who are scoring in bunches, have a back-to-back week where they score either 1 or 2 touchdowns in one week, 1 touchdown the other, and look to sell those guys. And obviously you should also look to sell the guys that may see their role change coming back. Like Mike Williams, some people might view as a sell high potential because when Keenan Allen's back, his role changes and his production might go down as well. So I would look for those things, guys who are scoring a lot of touchdowns at a rate that can't sustain, that isn't sustainable, and then guys whose roles could change based on injuries and different situations evolving.
Caleb Skaggs asks, this just feels like an awful start for all offenses across the league. Do the stats agree? And this is where I got to go get Jacob's notes here because he gave us some great notes on this.
Yep. With a TLDR being yes. With a TLDR being yes, you're right. Scoring is down.
It is down. I think I have the wrong thread here with Jacob.
Okay, I can probably pull this up as well while we're doing it. And I will say this.
I should have put this in my notes. I apologize to everyone.
It's okay.
But I can. You look it up. I'm going to give some stats while you look it up. Sure. Ready? Here are the amount of quarterbacks who are averaging 21 points per game in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. 8. There have been at least 11 in each of the previous 4 seasons. There are only 8 this year. Quarterbacks averaging 21 points per game. Running backs averaging 15 PPR points per game. A little bit down. The last 5 years, it's been 12, 14, 15, 16. This year, it's 12. So it's down 4 from last year. Wide receivers averaging 15 points per game. Basically the same this year as it has been each of the last 5 years. Now 5 straight years where we've had 18 to 21 wide receivers averaging 15 PPR points per game. The big difference is at quarterback. Quarterback production has been much worse. Jacob, talked about how 2020 and 2021 were amazing offensive years, and maybe we're just back to what normal should look like. But what you define the note?
Yeah, the notes are as follows. For 2015 through 2019, teams were averaging 1.88 points per drive. So that's a pretty solid sample size there, 5 seasons. In 2020, 2.18. In 2021, 2.03. And now so far in 2022, it's bounced all the way back down to that sustainable, that 5-year average of 1.88. It's now 1.90. So there has been a clear dip from the last 2 seasons, but it kind of aligns more with what we saw from 2015 through 2019.
But he also said that some of the things that offenses were doing in 2020 and 2021 to increase scoring, pre-snap motion, going for it more on fourth down, those types of things, they are still doing that in 2022, which gives us hope that scoring could rebound, right?
Yep, exactly. There was far more pre-snap motion, more the go for it rates were higher, increased play action usage, which leads to more points, increased shotgun usage, which leads to more points, and slightly increased first down pass rate. That still needs to come up across the NFL. But what I contend, Adam, is the one thing that we've seen that's been true for the first 4 weeks of the season, it was pronounced, and this is kind of continued on this trend throughout the last 2 weeks, is schematically speaking, defenses are playing a lot differently than they did this past 2 seasons. Yeah. And that's a big factor in this. You have more defensive coordinators coming from the Brandon Staley tree. And that's not even where it started. Brandon Staley's an offshoot of that tree. But the idea is zone coverage, 2 safeties over the top, middle of the field open instead of middle of the field close, which leads, and by that I mean middle of the field open means you have 2 safeties split or sometimes 3 safeties split. And cover 3, which wouldn't be middle of the field open, but versus middle of the field close is 1 safety over the top. And you kind of have the opportunity to hit deep passes on the left or right side on the boundary. But when you have 2 safeties over the top in the middle of the field open, there really isn't much opportunity to kind of create big plays in the passing game on the deep end. And more defenses are moving toward this style of defense to keep everything in front of them, as we've seen throughout the NFL this season. And that is just going to specifically lead to a lot fewer explosive plays per game.
Okay, yeah, that's the adjustment. I think it started kind of the middle of last year and it's carried over this year for sure. I made the joke that if the Chiefs safeties were playing any deeper yesterday, they would have been in the end zone. The Bills. You saw the strategy there, and then they ran the ball as much as they did. You know,
and that comes from its coordinator Steve Spagnuolo for the Chiefs that doesn't want to do that. He wants to play, single high middle field closed looks and blitz often, but he even himself had to adjust. And we've seen that throughout the year. These specific game plans. The Ravens did it last week to take away big plays from the Bengals. So I feel like we're gonna get that. We're gonna get that consistently moving forward.
All right, last topic here. Our 5 favorite albums. You think I struggled with the Sell High? I struggled big time with this. In fact, I'd probably have a completely different list tomorrow if you asked me. But what are your 5 favorite albums, or just your top 5 albums, however you want to define it?
I'm with you. This is a tough thing to do. So let me start by just breaking down one of my favorite bands ever, which is Led Zeppelin. Now this is the hardest one to do.
I hate Led Zeppelin.
Oh my God.
I cannot stand Led.
Why?
I think I can't stand his shrieky voice. I don't like Smashing Pumpkins. I don't like Guns N' Roses. I don't like
even relatable.
No, it's the shrieky, shrill voice, and it's so funny coming from me because I know I have like a high pitched voice, but I can't stand those vocals. I can't do it.
All right, well, I'll go fast through the Led Zeppelin pick. For me, it is Physical Graffiti. It is tough. I love House of the Holy. Led Zeppelin 1 through 3, even 4 is amazing. This is just an unbelievably elite band. But Physical Graffiti has just some absolute bangers on it. House of the Holy, Kashmir, In the Light, Trampled Underfoot, Custard Pie. There's just so many. The Rover. Great album. So I'll go with Led Zeppelin.
Interesting pronunciation of the word cashmere.
Yeah, I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced.
Cashmere.
How's it supposed to be pronounced?
Kashmir. You said Kashmir. It was very, very strange.
Okay. I've been known to have weird pronunciations, so that'll continue on. I'll move forward with some more niche picks here. I'll go with a non-niche. I'll go with the Allman Brothers, Eat a Peach. I will say if you're looking for the best Allman Brothers content, though, which is my favorite band of all time, you should just rock the Live at the Fillmore East album, which is just absolute fire, banger after banger. Dwayne Allman just trading off licks, just as good as it gets from a guitar standpoint, really, there with Dwayne Allman and Dickie Betts just trading off. So I'll go there, number 2. Number 3, I'll start to hit into the niche here with My Morning Jacket. I'm going to go with Z for My Morning Jacket. I think It Still Moves is probably the best album for what I like, but It Still Moves has a couple misses on the back half. Z as a whole is just such an interesting, unique rock experience, and the album really flows well together. So I'll go Z, My Morning Jacket, number 3. Number 4, Favorite Worst Nightmares, Arctic Monkeys. Unbelievable album. Just has everything you want there. Another album that's so good start to finish. And then I'll close out, Adam, with 5, Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous by Big L.
Okay,
I'm sure you've never heard of that one,
Never.
Right?
No.
Okay, that's a niche pick as well.
Okay, all right. By the way,
late 90s rapper.
The guy who you said Kashmir called me Iser for like the longest time. So yeah.
Well, I told you I grew up with an Iser. Okay, I grew
Yeah,
up with.
well, my top five. This is really bad list. I'm almost embarrassed because yours was really impressive, but I'm not really an album guy.
What does that mean?
I like music and I would listen to songs that I like, but you couldn't really convince me to listen to a lot of albums because I don't. Yeah, if there are songs that I don't like, I really hate listening to songs that I don't like, and I don't like most songs. So if there'd be so many, I don't know.
You're a playlist guy. You're like a playlist.
I'm a greatest hits album kind of guy. Like
Okay.
Tom Petty, love Tom Petty. I love it all Tom Petty hits, but I pretty much never listen to any album start or finish. I think I did Damn the Torpedoes a few months ago for the first time. I listened to it for the first time, but start to finish. But I'm not really an album guy. But anyway, my favorite albums, I just did the ones that kind of influenced me when I was in middle school, high school, college. So number one is Chili Peppers Stadium Arcadium.
Oh, that's amazing.
Double album. Love it.
Amazing, that album. I can't believe I didn't pick that. What a miss by me.
I mean, you could say Californication.
No, Stadium Arcadium is the
I like Stadium
one.
Arcadium.
That's
better,
the one.
Californication had the hits that really made me a Chili Peppers fan. But the self-titled Sublime album.
Yep.
You know that one? It's got
Good
What
pick.
I Got and Santeria. It said Wrong Way. Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette. Listen to that every day of my life. And when I was in
okay.
Never stopped listening to that.
That explains a lot.
You would have too. What does that explain?
I'm just joking. I don't know. I just wanted to see where you would go with that.
Yeah, I don't know where you're going with that. I mean, that is a classic album. Absolutely incredible. If you were my age, you would have. Everybody my age listened to that every day.
I'm totally joking with you.
Yeah, I was. I guess I was like 12 when that came out.
You ever seen the Alanis Morissette Curb Your Enthusiasm episode?
Yes.
So good.
Really funny. This one is weird. This one kind of got me into rock music. Everclear, So Much for the Afterglow.
Don't know that one at all. The first three I knew. I do not know that one at all.
Everything to Everyone. You ever heard that song?
Probably if you sang it, but we don't. Nobody wants that.
And then this one's a little embarrassing, but I can't lie. I love this freaking album. I saw the band play one of those concerts where they play an album start to finish, and it was one of my favorite concerts. Third Eye Blind, self-titled album.
Okay.
It's got.
What's wrong with that? Why is there a Can't Lie? I feel like it's a good album.
Well, it's a little. People make fun of me.
People make fun of it. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that. Okay.
It's got Semi-Charmed Life. It's got Jumper. I mean, it's a Graduate. How's it gonna be? What an album.
Yeah, that's a great album.
I mean, right. It's just bangers on there. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate your support.
Yeah, I support those picks fully.
And I was very impressed with you. You went real classic rock there, and that was
my
good
jam.
stuff.
I'm a jam guy.
You should start playing guitar, man. Me and Chris play.
Do you play?
Yeah.
Wow.
4 years, I think.
Wow, we might need to put this. How have we not streamed this at any point on FFT?
I'm not good enough, but
Well, can you let us be the judge of that?
I could tell you. I mean, if you don't play guitar, you'd think I'm good.
Yeah.
If you did play guitar, you'd know I'm not.
That's
it's one of those situations. All right, we're out of here, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. We will talk to you tomorrow with the Waiver Wire on Fantasy Football Today.